Sundown, back shoreline, man. Again, our water levels have dropped back out some. We had some super high tides there for a while. But then it finally kind of normalized here around this big moon that we've had. Since we're here now on the back side of that, moving forward this coming week, that is something you need to make sure that you take in to account as you fish whatever area that you're wanting to fish, where you're going to be. So up here in Sundown, this whole back shoreline has been very good. We've had fish up and down this area, primarily redfish have been in this area. A tremendous amount of bait. You got a mushy bottom. You got scattered shell that's up and down here, fishing the back lake mouths that go back into some of these, like toward Long Lake and the other smaller lakes that are even further down. But the one thing, it's been consistent. What has happened is our bite frame early morning during the moon set has been good. It's been pretty consistent in the morning. Hadn't been a tremendous, not tons and tons and tons of fish, but we've had our opportunities, and that's what you want. You're just trying to get as many opportunities as you can to catch those fish. So when that moon is setting early in the morning, then we're trying to get to 10, maybe 11 o'clock in the morning times before it really starts to taper out on us, and that bite just kind of finally fades out on you. Primarily things that we've been throwing in and around that time frame have been the burner shads. Multiple different flavors of the burner shad. Purple rain's been good. Acid rain has been very good. Mud minnow's been solid. Supernatural has been good for us. White ice, just kind of your normal staples that we've been throwing. Twisted tea, Big Papa Pearl, all those have been great flavors to throw, especially in the water that's up in this area here, and the stain of it and how it's a little bit darker. That wind starts to blow in there, so it'll muddy it up. So it gives you those opportunities to throw those darker baits, and that just allows you to be able to stay on and catch fish a little bit longer. Then the knock and tail lures have been very good. Greenbacks, Rogue's been money for us for a while. It's like Twisted Tea in the down south. Those two flavors right there, if that's only two flavors that you had in your box, you're going to catch fish on them. No matter where you're going to fish, you're going to catch some fish that are on those particular flavors. So if you don't have anything other than Rogue or Twisted Tea, it's fine. You'll be all right. Again, main thing that we've been throwing as far as the weight-wise has been the 16th ounce jig head. Again, that's one of my favorite tactics to use to allow that bait to really just kind of glide on you. Doesn't just drop down into the grass or move anything like that, and doesn't become a difficult bait to try to control. So you can really take your time with it and work it through the water column. Primarily thigh deep water has been the primary depth that we've been fishing. We found all our fish in that depth of water. It's been good. When that water's dropping out and you start getting around that knee deep, then maybe we're trying to find a little bit more of a area that's got adjacent, a little bit deeper water, not tremendous deep, not out, get by the ICW and fish that. It's not that far falling out, but, if you got some depressions or maybe some cuts or some passes or edges like that where there's a subtle drop, that'll be something that you'd want to target during that kind of time frame as that water begins to move out of there. Another bait that's been pretty good for us, the Little Johns, watermelon red has been pretty good. Golden Red Glitter's been pretty good, depending on what your water clarity is. If you've had some pretty clean water, throw that more translucent bait, and it's been effective for us. Grass has still been the main key. We're still fishing mud areas, a lot of shell. That's another thing that we'll get into here shortly into another video, is the shell is starting to light up with fish. It's starting to get better and better around those areas. It's not consistent yet, but it's getting there. That's the kind of the little small things we've paid attention to as we work somewhere like in Sundown here, that you've got a little bit of everything. You've got grass, you've got the mud, you've got the shell, you've got some cuts, you've got back lake mouths that you can fish. So it's lend itself for us to be pretty productive during our fishing days, especially around this big moon. So again, the minors have been good for us. If you didn't want to fish the early morning time frame as far as that, fish the moon rise. So when that moon's coming up in the evening time, there's been opportunities there. Of course, we've primarily been focusing on our morning frame in and around that time frame. So pay attention to what your wind and all that stuff is doing during those time frames. Don't get you a super heavy jig hit on there, because you're just not going to be as productive for you. That's why the purpose of the 16th is to control the depth, control the descent of your baits that you're working. Topwater's been okay. We'll still get opportunities with that, but it's just better with plastic right now. So throw the smaller profile, where again we're transitioning away from the full moon and starting to get into our transition days. That won't be for another few days before that really takes place. So you can still capitalize on our big moon that's around us right now. Again, pay attention to what your weather patterns are doing, because we're kind of in that volatile time of the year in the spring where a lot of things can take place, and they can take place pretty fast. So make sure that your safety is first and foremost, and pay attention to your bait in those types of areas and during those minor feed periods. Man's super flats, another one of the areas I love to fish. This is a tremendous time of the year to get on the super flats. If your conditions are right for you, if your tides are right, whatever. You still need to go fish it. You got points, you got edges, you've got a tremendous amount of grass, and your bait's been prolific that's in these areas. There's been fish that have been scattered up and down this whole shoreline, from the point there off the Liddy End all the way down to Blind Pass as you go around Mud Island, that tip down there close to the ranch house area. All this area down in here. Just run to a spot, get into an area that you want to fish and really cover. One of the better areas that we've gotten is on the point here at the turn. Back up in this area here has been really good for us. You've got an edge that's out here. You've got a great amount of grass that's there. You can work all those. You've got great potholes. Our water levels have fluctuated enough that's been really good for this particular area there. And so it really lends itself to you to have some great opportunities in there. Find the bait that's working these areas. Get over those grass pockets and just take your time and work all that. It's really protected from the southeast breeze. Even when you have a north breeze, north, northwest, even northeast, you can still work it. You can still get yourself and have an opportunity to work these areas in here. Again, main thing that we've been throwing here again around this big moon, small profile, so 3 to 4 inch baits at best. Another bait came to mind as well has been the Sundown. The smaller version of that has been very good. It's not a very long bait, but it's just a little bit fatter and gives you just enough that those fish may want to have just something just a tad bit bigger than maybe like what a burner shad would be or for the knock and tail would be. So if you have one of those as well, tie that on if you want to work that particular bait. That's been very effective on the edges where that water depth has changed from maybe thigh to knee deep to maybe belly deep water. So those fish are hanging off just a little bit, tad bit deeper water, so you can really prospect that area in those types of places like that with that particular bait. It's a very good bait to do that with. If not, then put whatever burner shad flavor that you want, depending on what your water flavor is or what the color is, if it's darker, if it's stained, or if it's clean. Adjust accordingly. Again, the minors have been the main thing, and if you wanted to hang out there until you could fish the midday majors or maybe this early afternoon majors in that time frame, depending on where we are with the minors, you can do that. Now, the production level of it has not been very great. It's okay. You might grind some fish out or scratch them up here or there, but your main points or your main production time frame has been your minors, and that's the moon rise and the moon set. So if one of those time frames really works for you as far as what you're able to get on the water with, then focus on that time frame and fish it. Early when that moon has been setting for us and we've still had some daylight when it's happening, or if it's starting to rise and your dark's coming, allow yourself a little bit of opportunity to fish that into that time frame, because it can be very productive for you depending on where you're at. So these fish, females are really starting to continue to push up on grass. We're still catching those that's got eggs in them. So just be aware that you may have a great opportunity to catch you a quality fish in these types of areas. Redfish have been pretty good in these areas. Pulled out a few flounder here and there ever so often. But again, it's been, in and around the grass, off the edges, in the potholes. This area is up here too now. We're starting to transition away from the more muddy areas and starting to get into the more grass and hard packed sand and shale. That's going to be your focuses moving forward as we get into the first part of May and late May, and then start getting into June and July. It's not very far away. It'll happen and be here before you know it. So really start looking in those particular areas and see what find your bait fish work in these areas. Pay attention to what your majors and minors are, when they are, as far as in relation to when you're going to be on the water. Pay attention to what our weather's doing as well, and you'll find and locate fish. Swan Lake, all the area on the outside, man, you got a nice little drop out here on this grass line edge that works for you. It's pretty hard packed sand and grass that's out here. You've got some great opportunities around these little islands. You've got a big flat that's right here. You've got the drop edge that's on this outside with this cut through that comes through it. You've got all that particular area that you can work, and then you can get on the back side of Swan. We work this whole back shoreline, all very wadeable. It's get a little mushy, of course. I've talked about the back side of these islands before, especially during the winter months. It gets pretty mushy that's back up in there, so be aware if you want to continue to fish that area, that's fine. It's not a problem. But a lot of our fish that we're finding and locating have been on this back shoreline or out in the middle. Double D's have been pretty good back here. The soft dines have been pretty good back in here again. Throwing the burner shad. Burner shad's been very productive for us through this time frame. The knock and tail lures have been very, very productive for us. It's what I was talking about earlier. The Rogue and the Twisted Tea have been the two main flavors that we've thrown a lot of and been very productive with. Other flavors, it's been pretty good. The Purple Rain's been pretty good for us. Big Papa's been pretty good for us. It's been just to name a couple of those. And then, of course, you got your standbys and your white ice, Chicken of the Sea. They've all been pretty good as well. So whatever flavors that you have in those has been working pretty good for us. So in the knock and tail, it's been the greenbacks. When we've had that really good clean water, we've thrown a lot of the heavy metal. Has been good. Rogue, again, has been a great flavor. Mud mint or glass minnow has been good, especially in that clean water. So that's something that you need to take into account for. If you don't have one of those or a package of those, you might want to pick some of those up. And then, of course, the flavor smoke. So it's got looks really a lot like a little finger mullet type of thing. So anyhow, so if you've got that, that's been very productive moving into the springtime for us because it just mimics what the indigenous bait is here for us, which is primarily mullet. So that bait's been very productive. So again, throwing the 16th ounce jig head, or also another thing that you can throw in there. We've noticed a lot of shrimp, smaller versions have been up and down these grass line edges. So if you've got the marker 54, throw that in there as well. It's been pretty good for us, although we've been sticking more with plastics. But if you like to throw the shrimp and you want to tie it under a popping cork, you can do that as well. It'll work great for you. It's a very quality bait, very productive bait for us. But we've located and found our fish on the back shoreline all the way up here and around. Grass has been the key thing for us. Potholes, those fish are in and around those things. We still got a lot of these trout that are starting to lay eggs, continuing to lay eggs as we move forward into the springtime. So those will be your target areas that you really want to look for. Make sure that you're locating bait. If you're not having bait working in an area, then it's not going to be very productive for you. You might want to move on and find you another location. So that's another thing that you always want to do, especially right now moving forward, because there's going to continue to be, as weekends pass and we get closer to summertime and into summertime, these fish, there's going to be a lot of pressure that's going to start getting on as the crowds will show up. There'll be more and more people show up on the weekends or, Fridays, Mondays. Those will be super busy days. Saturday, obviously, the most busy. So just take that into account that you'll have maybe a handful of locations that you potentially could fish for any given day that you're going to be on the water just to help yourself out. Because there's, again, weekend fishing, there's going to be people that's going to be posted up in areas that you may thought that maybe not be there, but somebody shows up on it. So just a word of the wise, just make sure you have different locations that you can get to if somebody's in that particular spot that you want to fish that day. Again, the majors and minors have been the key. Minors primarily right here around this big moon that we've had. Again, we're fixing to get into transition days in the next few days, but you can still take advantage of the big moon that we have in place right now. Again, safety is a big concern, especially in our springtime. We've had a lot of volatile weather. Make sure you're watching that and give yourself plenty of opportunity if you have to get out of there and get off the water sooner than expected. Again, work these areas, be patient with these areas, and you're going to find and locate you some nice fish.